Welcome to the Calling on You podcast. This podcast is my 365-day challenge and goal to speak to one new person each day and every day about fear and what we can learn from facing our fears. Why is fear an interesting and important topic for us to discuss? I believe that when we face our fears, we open ourselves up to new opportunities to live a greater and more meaningful life. When we face our fears, we discover that we are capable of so much more than what we ever imagined. My dad gave me a letter where he said to me, "Life is not a dress rehearsal." I have taken this to mean that every moment counts, and it is up to each of us to choose what we want to do with the moments that are passing by with increasing speed. It's up to all of us to make the most of what little time we have here on Earth. But we also don't need to think that we need to do everything alone. Along the way, we will meet some amazing people, mentors, and friends. I hope this podcast can help each and every one of us to live a little more on the edge of our comfort zone and challenge our fears and help others as they are facing their fears as well. Now, here is today's story about fear and what we can learn.
I'm just sitting down here relaxing and talking to you honestly, so I hope that's okay if I sound a little... I know I'm not selling you like a pitch, but anyway, my name is Michael Hyatt. I'm in residential real estate for Sotheby's International Realty. I'm a native of Los Angeles, and I'm very lucky to be selling real estate in the lifestyle of Los Angeles to now a global audience. So I am basically in the sales business, but I always think about residential real estate as it is such a transformative experience that, that I am, very passionate and honored to help people. So I'm really in the business of solutions, and I'm in the business of experiences, and I'm in the business of bringing to people both on the sales side and on the buy side, on the change in their lives and in their investments that deal with residential real estate and residential real estate income properties. So that's a little bit about myself, but in residential real estate, it's a highly, highly competitive business. And there's a lot of things that we have to do that may not come easily. And there's a lot of fear factors when you are talking to potential clients and prospective clients. So many, many agents, and including myself, you go through a period through the experiences of your business and the skills you need to have for that business. And one of those skills is meeting new people and connecting with them in a very real way. And a lot of those experiences as well starts with a phone call. You want a warm phone call, you want a phone call that's been referred to you, but many times you'll discover important homes, and people who would benefit from your services you have never met in your life. So it is a cold call. And that's the experience I want to share with you. But before I talk about that, fear is what holds everybody back. So this is a very important subject to me personally, because throughout my life and throughout my career, there are things that were debilitating and were big obstacles, and mainly from the fear. It's not owning the values of what you have, but it's a fear of other things actually quite unrelated and that really have to do with yourself. So you need to take yourself out of the equation to begin with, because everything you're doing, you're really doing for others. You're doing for your clients, not for you. And one of the important, there are always many mantras, that go out there and that are circulated to empower people and empower your lives and empower your sales life and empower your career life. And the one that's so relevant to this and so important to this conversation is work from faith, not work from fear. Okay? Work from faith, not from fear. And if you really begin to own that and own what you're doing and what you're bringing to someone, I think faith becomes a lot healthier and more empowering operative point. So a quick story, and again, there are many stories, but I will never ever forget how fearful I was and how debilitating it became. Almost, I cannot describe how psychologically debilitating it was. Picking up a phone and talking to somebody, picking up a phone you don't know, and you want to call them and you want to introduce yourself to them and you want to tell them about what you do and you want to tell them about how you can help them. And if that fear gets bad enough, which it did get for me, I literally, now many people will tell you they pick up the phone, they think about it and they put the phone down. You do this once, eventually you have to dial, and then you do it. You pick it up, you put it down, you pick it up, you put it down. It's so debilitating. You just lose confidence. Your confidence continues to erode and erode and erode. You try to dial a couple of numbers, and you're frightened, and you put the phone down, and you keep doing this, and all this is doing is feeding that fear and feeding incompetence, and feeding self-value and worthlessness, actually. It literally, I would try, and the harder I try, the less I even knew what to say, even if now I had practiced this. I had known exactly what I wanted to say. Really, all I wanted to say was, hi, my name is Michael Hyatt. I work with Sotheby's International Realty. At this time, I actually worked with a different company. But that's all I had to say. How are you doing today? I'm following up on a letter I sent you. These are easy sentences. These are easy concepts to recall. But I can tell you, in this experience of fear, I didn't even think I could talk. I could open my mouth. And anyway, this went on for quite some time. To be truthful, it went on for quite some time. Other things in my life, other things of sales coaching and personal empowerment allowed me to better deal with other aspects. And eventually I would come back to cold calling, and I became, much more effective at it. I embrace it. I like it. I will call you, whether I know you or not. I will tell you why I'm calling you. But again, that fear stayed with me and came to be so debilitating. And again, eventually, as I say, I have overcome it to the point where I can call Adam Weber and be a part of his podcast, and I hope brought something of value to his listeners. Anyway, I want to thank you very much.
Michael, I love the story. One of the things that just jumped out that you said, which is so fascinating, is the harder you would try, the more off the rails it would go. And really, all you had to do was call and say, hey, how are you doing? But in our mind, we make things bigger and scarier and more difficult. But when you went back to kind of just the essence of what it is just calling to make a connection, to say, hi, how you doing? It got so much easier. But we sit there and we let things echo around in our mind, and then it grows into until you don't even know what you're saying. In essence, just making it more difficult than it needs to be.
That is it. In a nutshell, that is exactly. And it's hard to even imagine. What you're saying is hard to imagine how difficult it was becoming, how it was growing and manifesting and eating away, just like a cancer. It was a terrible, terrible time. That fed a lot of unraveling. That's fed a lot of other things, because your self-worth becomes so eroded when you can't even pick up a phone. I mean, if you really imagine how it seems like a simple task, pick up a phone and dial a number and say hello. Not a tough task.
It's the rejection on the other end, though. It's not about the phone call. It's about
Correct.
the fear of the response that you might get.
Correct.
And if you get hung up on, or someone says, "Why are you calling me?" then it has
Correct.
this feedback loop of "I'm not good enough" or "I'm not worthy."
Correct. 100%. I mean, the root of that is the rejection. And, again, you're calling to help. You're calling to say hello. If somebody hangs up, you can't help somebody who doesn't want help or doesn't, So there are other reasons. I become a big believer. I know the 4 agreements, but the one, don't take anything personally, is probably one of the best agreements you can make with yourself, because really, it's never about you. It's always about them. It's always about others. So again, in sort of, again, that's a kind of a general way to look at it. But again, listen, but assess, but don't take personally. Be who you
I love
are.
that. Your intentions are in the right place, and when you spoke about how removing the self and making it about the other, I thought that was really beautiful. And if that means that your intentions are in alignment with trying to make the world a better place, trying to help somebody who might need help, putting out your services and offering it. And then from there, I couldn't be in agreement more with, don't take things personally. It's such a powerful thing that when you can really embody that,
Right.
and it doesn't become this esoteric thing where you can actually live it, and wow, it really takes a lot of the stress and pressure off that we put on ourselves.
Adam, you're a delight, and you're so connected, and you and I are talking the same language. So, you understand the subject matter, you understand what I'm talking about, and I'm so happy it has some value. I feel that this actually has some value, and there's just these simple but very important lessons, and it's just speak unless you begin to really assimilate it, like you say. You really make that an intention is such a strong word, and again, such a very powerful word. If you have your intention, if you're impeccable with your word, and you're focused on the right intention, it makes other things fall into line. That's just the way it is.
Was there a moment in time when you saw the switch happen in your life where the phone call and that rejection became less scary? Was there a trend? Did it take a certain amount of calls for you to go through that process? Was there something that somebody, you had a mentor or somebody came into your life that really helped adjust the lens and the focus for you, or what was it that
there were
finally...
so many aspects? I could not pinpoint the tipping point, okay? But I can tell you I've worked so hard at it from many, many different angles. It's actually, executing it and living it takes effort. It's not, you can't get it, you can read it, you can understand it. I mean, I read the 4 agreements, let's say, I don't know, 5 years ago. But it's today, it popped in my head. I had to reread it. And they reread it for really those things that have become part of my core, become part of my operational core, a core values, but how I operate every day. I would say this has been going on for probably 3 years, but, there was a certain amount of, let's say it's coaching, it's hypnotic coaching. I have done a lot of spiritual work. I've done a lot of, diet's important. Spiritual work is important. Meditation is important. All of these, they all contribute to it, and eventually it just became who I am. I hope, again, there was no magic moment, and it certainly wasn't a magic moment about making phone calls. As a matter of fact, making phone calls was not how I wanted to do business. If I'm not good at something, why would I keep doing it? There are other ways. There's always another way to reach somebody, to talk to somebody, to connect with somebody. But if I have to call them today, that's easy. You understand?
What made you not quit, though? Like, so many times in life, we come across these experiences that scare the daylights out of us. And it would be so much easier just to turn and run or go or look somewhere else for something else that we can do. What made you move forward on this path and not give up?
Big question. Let's do another podcast. That's an interesting question. I am that kind of person. I don't think I'd give up. I just never quit. I'm very passionate about what I'm doing, and there was no chance that I would ever quit what I'm doing. And that's part of you have to want something. You have to have a reason to want something so badly, and that's many, many things. But again, there are many, many things that make that up. The specific isn't important. I guess children. I guess I had children. That's always a good one. I had children, and I wanted to make sure that, I had a business, a career where I could take care of my family. I guess if you wanted to pinpoint one underlying, but I've always been this. I've always been this way without children. That's just who I am. But again, in anything you do, you must have a reason. You must have a reason why you're doing this. And then say, I like, and you have to like what you're doing. It's hard for me to imagine to be doing something that I didn't like. But there's certain skill sets I certainly don't have. And you can, I always like the game of sports. So, if I always like, if there's a player who's missing some bit of the skill level, he just, is a great running quarterback, but he can't pass. You sit and you work on passing all day, every single day. There are certain skill sets you don't have, but certain skill sets can elevate your profession, or your job, or your day-to-day success. And you can always do better, and you can always find a different way. As I say to you, I've never had to make a phone call again in my life, and I probably didn't for a long time. And I pursued other avenues to make the same essential connection, but that took work too, by the way. All these things don't happen necessarily overnight. I know it always looks that way to the outsider, but it's always a result of a lot of discipline, a lot of work.
It's that iceberg where everything that you've done is laying beneath the water, and people, when you are reaching a certain level of mastery or success, they see that tip of the iceberg, but they don't see all the work.
Right, it is correct, 100%. And by the way, I've been in real estate. I've been in real estate for about 17 years, but I've been in the people business since I was in my 20s, which is, I hate to tell you, close to 40 years. So I've always been in that experiential one-on-one people business. And by the way, I was in the entertainment business before that as a director and a producer. So it's very similar. It's the experiences of a movie, and what you take from that is the experiences we get as humans when we live someplace and live a lifestyle and enjoy those rewards, or enjoy and enrich our own lives. Not necessarily, I mean, I guess there are always rewards from that thing, but it is about experiences.
Yeah, I agree. It's what as humans, we're seeking out, and that's what we remember is an experience. That's what our brains latch onto. I'd love to ask you a question about what if there was a value that you really felt like you learned from your parents, what value would it be that really sticks with you? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I still look back, this conversation where I gave up. I still know where I gave up. So I don't want to give up. That's an interest, but that is what it is. Don't give up.
Yeah, and
there's nothing to give up for. Once you give up, then you've given up. I mean, if you have to have purpose, so don't give up your purpose, but you have to know what your purpose is, and you have to love your purpose.
Has your purpose always been clearly defined for you, or is that something you had to discover?
Had to discover. Yeah, no, it was always, I never understood it before. I wish I understood purpose like when I was 20. I hope my kids too, both my kids, they understand their purpose. My one son is a musician, and a very talented musician. So he has a gift. His purpose. I pray to God. I pray to God to just keep him on his direction for his purpose. He's as clear can be. And he goes through periods where he can't write a song. I mean, he's kind of written out, sung out, And this COVID has had a big effect on my kids. They're in their 20s, whatever they are, millennials or whatever. It's had a huge impact on him because he played a lot of shows. He likes to perform, so he can't perform.
Have you been able to have conversations with your kids during this time about how it's affecting them?
Yeah. I've been with my son, who's 26 years old, for 200 days. I wouldn't see my son for 200 days. I don't know. I did the math. Prior to COVID, it would have probably taken me a good 10 years to see my son 200 days. Does that make sense to you?
It does. It does.
Okay.
So I was thinking, there's
and
always...
And then, let me tell you one other thing, because he has a touring van, so I hadn't seen him enough for 200 days. Okay, so then I locked myself in his van with him, and we did a road trip up the coast, and that was incredible, too. He's wanted to take his road van, and it's all, his touring van. You can record in it and all kinds of things, which he built himself, by the way. So like a 1984 150 Econoline. I don't know how he got me into it. I usually fly and stay at a hotel, but no, he got me to do this. But it's one of those experiences I'll never forget. But one of his things is he wants to tour all 50 states. It's funny, I talked to our friend, a mutual friend of ours, Adam, and she knew somebody who did the same thing. He wants to tour all the 50 states in his van and write a song, etc. But we talked about podcasts, and the most interesting thing was spending time with him. He listens to music, and he does a whole conversation with me, especially a lot of the music he knows is a lot of music that I live with. So he interprets, what their turning point song to him is for his generation. These artists who keep who endure. So, I said, well, why don't you do a podcast? You're on the road for 2 hours. Can't you do a podcast from city to city? He said, I like that idea. And that comes with one caveat. If I give him an idea at my age and for his audience, it's usually in the wrong direction. He always tells me, Dad, I'm sorry. You're not my audience. But this time he hooked into the idea. He thought that was the right idea for him. So.
It's so special to be able to check. We talked about how when you are selling real estate, you're really selling experiences, and how that is what people resonate with and connect with. And it's the same, we crave experiences, and being able to do something on that level with just the raw authenticity to hit the open road and get into your son's van and get to share a moment of traveling up the coast with him. I bet there's just nothing like that.
And that's an extension of home. He's here. This is a safe place for him. I mean, he was living in some party loft in downtown art district, LA art scene, and COVID hit. I mean, there was no way. So he came home, and it's been transformational. So.
Yeah, it's interesting how in life there's always it's not always one way. There's
correct.
The horrible aspects of the pandemic, and also the beautiful sides of the pandemic that opened up a whole nother experience in life that you now have.
And mindset. It'll be interesting. I hope it's not forgotten, the lessons of COVID, but it'll be interesting because some of the things that have sort of manifested themselves during this. Like you say, some is good, some has been terrible, and some has been about responsibility of each other, responsibility of our government. I mean, it has been 2020, nobody could have imagined it, but it has been one of the most mind-opening, mind-inspiring times. Challenging times. I mean, I've never had, none of us have done it before. I don't know if we'll ever have to do it again. How a time that has so altered our lives, and we were up to the challenge in many ways. And that's the new generations. I think they've helped. All that technology and all the things that have become a part of our economy now have really been able to kick into gear and help us in so many ways. So, interesting times.
I'd love in closing to ask you to maybe share a very short piece of advice for anyone out there if they are experiencing fear. What message would you want to kind of stick in their ear that they could hear in those moments when they're experiencing fear?
Spend time connecting to yourself is the only thing that comes to mind in a short answer. And that's really through meditation and prayer and respect for yourself, which also has to do with diet. It's just very powerful healing medication in the simple foods you eat, and healing in the spiritual connections, whatever your spiritual connection is. I think fear in God is, I think that's, if you listen to the Psalm of David, that pretty much answers your questions. I mean, there is a higher power. I think that's the short answer. I don't know where I got that from. I have a connection to a religion. It's not important in this conversation, but the spiritual connection and the real connection and trying to connect to that sort of a higher power came much later in my life. But I do, it's hugely powerful and hugely healing.
It's interesting you say that, because I'm a true believer that things come into our life when we need it. It's always there. It's just we are open to seeing things when we need it most, and when we need it most
Right.
is, it'll come in and it'll be there for us.
And
so,
that's important, though. I do want to say it. I can't give you in one sentence, the solution. The solution for everybody is different, and it's part of their own journey, but take that journey. Okay? I mean, I don't have any idea what it is for you or for anybody. I only know what it is for me. And, it was huge, and it's for a lot of people. I mean, you get it. You can see top performing athletes. You can see top performers in every field, their connection to something that helps them take their, potential to the next level, or their fears, or overcome their fears. And as a business person, business people have business coaches. Tennis players have tennis coaches. Life has life coaches. I mean, there's a huge value to that, because a lot of that just human interaction can open up so many possibilities, and people share, like this podcast is doing, things that we've all experienced, that we have a common experience, whether it's good or it's bad. How to change it and what works for each individual is, there is no answer. There is no particular one answer, but there is an answer for each of us individually.
Yeah, beautifully said, and I agree 100%. And while it is unique and different for all of us, it's so fascinating how there are threads that run through a line through all of it. And like you said, things that are important to you, when you talked about health and eating, there is something about, taking care of ourselves and taking those moments to really,
respect
align
ourselves.
Yeah, and align with, am I treating myself the best way I can be right now? Am I eating right? Am I sleeping enough?
You can say that again, by the way. One of the keys, get your sleep. I have to tell you, I guess if there is one thing, sleep is a huge factor. I think success is, we're up early in the morning and the early bird gets the worm and you're out doing all of these things. But the key, I think, one of the real keys, the simple key, so funny you said this, and I didn't even mention it, is get the right sleep for you. And don't turn your mind off for 6 or 8 hours. All of those issues and problems or whatever is keeping you up at night, I promise you, they'll all be there in the morning. So let it go for 6 to 8 hours, because that's the most important thing you could do for yourself, is sleep. And that's just, culturally, we've kind of messed that up a little bit. You'll take sleeping pills, you'll do all of these things, and you can actually work on sleeping. And that's another experience if you want to go. That was actually one of those major changes. When I figured out, behavioral therapy and sleeping, that changed the whole picture, by the way.
Yeah, and
you brought that up at the very end.
It's interesting.
A simple concept, but people don't get it.
Yeah, it's really interesting how these things ripple out, because when you take care of yourself, you're actually then also able to better take care of the people in your lives. If you don't have enough sleep, then you're more on edge and you become more snappy to your kids or to your, whomever, your coworkers or whoever it is in your life.
Your thinking is wrong. I mean, you should do it. The next time we get together, let's talk about sleep, because that was life-changing too, because that's from not sleeping, and that feeds a lot of problems. So that was a really big part of my life, getting sleep under control. And without medication.
Yeah, that's key.
Medication doesn't help you very much. You have to get real sleep, that real.
It's amazing how all of these things, it's kind of like a circle where if you are off in your life in some way or another, whether you're not living in purpose or any of that, it's harder to sleep. And then when it's harder to sleep, you self-medicate or something, which then it's harder to then operate during the daytime. And it becomes a downward spiral. And how trying to balance the scales in all of these places really is an important feat in and of itself.
Nice.
And Michael, I'd love to ask you to share where people can find you online.
I'm glad. I thought you'd never ask. Well, anyway, I'm kidding. But I'm online. I'm on Instagram as Hyatt Homes. I have a website. Called The Biggest Stage in the World.com, or Hyatt Homes, HIATTHOMES.US. I have a YouTube channel, and I have a Facebook as well. So it's Michael Hiatt, HIATT. And it was such a pleasure. I don't do many podcasts. And if you want me to be honest, I think this is the first one.
Well, you did amazing. Thank you so much for being
so... But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed you, Adam, and thank you for having me on this podcast.
Yeah, well, thank you for being just vulnerable and open. And I know it was a spontaneous call for you, so being willing to be spontaneous is a beautiful thing.
Truly spontaneous, and you and I know that. I kind of left you Sunday, and I thought, well, I know we'll reconnect, so I'm glad I reconnected.
Absolutely.
Adam, much success with this. It was a very fun, fun is not quite the right word, but it was fun, and you've made it very comfortable, and I very much enjoyed it and the topic and the interaction with you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I look forward to talking to you again, Michael. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.